Hey everyone, it's Jeremy of Teletone. Today is a bookend of sorts for us. Around 5 years ago, we released our very first instrument. It was called Postcard Piano. At the time, we called it Act 1 of 3. The following year, we released Golden Age Grand, which we called Act 2. And several years later, here we are, finally ready to release Act 3. Part of the idea for this came up when I was working on Soulfy. And instead of using traditional condenser mics to mic the drums, I used an old RCA 77DX mic. With these older mics from the 50s and ribbon mics more generally, they seem to be very dynamic in nature because compared to a traditional condenser mic where it goes out and pulls the sound in, ribbon mics seem to let the sound travel to them, and it makes them very dynamic. And the RCA 77DX, I ended up buying a bunch of them now, but this is what it looks like. You've probably seen these before, but I have never seen anyone heavily utilize these in the sampling of a piano. There is so much, for lack of a better word, there's so much history in the sound of these microphones. And everyone that I bought, and I bought a bunch of them now, everyone sounds different from the next one, with one exception. I bought a pair that were the broadcast TV model of this microphone. And everything about the microphone is the same on the inside, but the outside, it has this matte finish because they were used on TV sets, and the matte finish would keep it from picking up too much of the glare from the studio lights. And it just so happened that this particular pair had basically left the factory together, traveled together, been serviced together, used together this entire time, and they were in just immaculate condition, and they sounded very, very clean. So these microphones are extremely dynamic, and as I mentioned, they have a lot of history to the sound, something that you can't really fake with software. They are basically like a time capsule in a microphone, and they do such a good job of taking whatever source you're recording and pulling it back into that era. So we leaned very heavily, almost entirely, on these RCA 77DX mics and put them at different positions all over the piano. So this brings us to the piano itself. And I was looking for something very specific this time around. With the Golden Age Grand, we sampled a concert grand with a very big sound. I wanted to still stick with the grand piano, but I wanted something a little bit smaller that sounded much bigger than an upright, but not the size of a concert grand. So I got a hold of a Baldwin L 6'3" grand piano, and I think that we came up with a really, really compelling combination of these things. My goal and my intention here is not to, kind of artificially recreate the sound of records from Diana Ross, Lou Rawls, Joni Mitchell from the 60s and 70s. We wanted to actually use the microphones that were available at that time in order to create that time capsule of a sound. I will admit that this was kind of a gutsy proposal to try to do this. It definitely had its complications, but I am thrilled with the way that it turned out. And I'm very, very pleased to announce that today we are releasing Broadcast Piano. But you would probably like to hear it a little bit, so I'm gonna play the piano before we dive into the controls and the interface. So as you can hear, there are a lot of dynamics to this piano. You can get whisper quiet. And then there's also plenty of growl. If you want it, a lot of bite on the low end. It can get really mean too, which is really what we were looking for. Okay, so let's look at the interface. And as I mentioned, this was a very, very Teletone idea. And our mantra from the beginning has been, we want you to use your ears, not your eyes. And so we have created everything with this UI with the intention of keeping you focused on the sound itself. Most of the sound is going to be manipulated by these 3 dials. There are a few other controls over here on the side, and then there's a cog menu that will open some more performance type options that you can edit. So what do these dials do exactly? Well, they change the sound. How? Well, they are blending different mic pairs, positions, and distances. And you'll notice that none of these things are specifically labeled because, once again, we want you to be fully focused on the sound of the instrument. So let's listen to what these dials do a bit. We'll start with the shade dial, and we'll turn it all the way left. And when we turn it all the way left, we are getting a microphone perspective that is basically behind the player's head and then pointed down at the piano. And then as we turn this up, you're going to watch the graphics are going to change a little bit. The sound is going to change. And then we are blending to a different mic position here. So when we go all the way left, we are getting a bit of that left-right stereo image. When we turn this all the way up, we are getting a more detailed view of the sound. It's a little bit more clear, it's more present. And then these are microphones that were placed in the crook of the piano. And of course, there's any combination in between where you can blend these. Let's move over to the decade dial now. This is something similar to what we've had on other instruments, but we're going about getting this sound in a very different way. I mentioned that these RCA 77DX mics have very different sounds from each other. The first one that I ever bought was much more lo-fi sounding and very mid-forward. And so we utilized that to create this decade knob. And the mic position for this one was basically in like a singer's position right in front of your face, but still kind of pointed down towards the strings. And so as you turn this up, it's going to mix in that microphone and it'll become more dominant as you turn it up. So the signal is also going to get more and more mono as you turn this up. And then all the way to the right here, we have our distance dial, and this is going to move the sound of the microphones back and forward inside the room. So those are the primary dials that you're going to use to manipulate the sound. Moving over to the right, you'll see we also have a width adjustment. And so you can take any of these combinations of things and make it all the way mono. You can also artificially exaggerate it and make things much wider than they really are. And then we have our nostalgia setting. Some of our instruments, this is just a button you turn on and off. This one, we have a stepped version of this, so you can make it sound even more and more nostalgic. What does it do? Well, we've never really explained that. We don't really know what it does. It just showed up one day and then we kept using it. So let's start with this first position. One thing that pairs really nicely with this nostalgia slider is the stability knob down here. And this is going to add some pitchy, warbly effects. Next, we have our dynamics dial, and this in a way works in conjunction with this velocity curve. And I'll get to that in a second, but reducing these dynamics does what you would expect. Now, it doesn't have to do with the velocity layers that you are choosing, but it has to do with how dynamic those velocity layers sound. When you turn this all the way down, now the volume is not really going to change no matter how hard or soft you play. But you can hear that the timbre does change. Turn it all the way up, and then you're going to get some very exaggerated dynamics, probably not very realistic. So normally I just kind of start with it in the middle. So, and then this velocity curve, this has to do with which actual recorded velocities it's going to use in conjunction with the dynamics. So if you wanted something that's basically only using the very top dynamic layers, then you could turn the minimum up, and you're going to get a much brighter, attacky sound. And then you can also do the opposite. If you wanted to just make sure that it's only using some of the softest velocity layers, then you can go back to the other side, and then you can almost get like a felt piano type sound if you turn up nostalgia. Reduce the dynamics a little bit, but still give it a little bit of dynamic range. Felt pianos are not very dynamic. And then by using curve, you can affect the curve of how you get to those top or bottom velocities. So when you turn it this way, it's going to be, you still have the full dynamic range, but it's a lot easier to get to those top velocities. you turn it the other way, you can still get there, but you're gonna have to play harder to get there. Then over here we have a few more performance options. Here's a sustain pedal noise, hammer noise, and then your release samples. And then we added this option also. This is a quick response. This is going to start the samples a little bit more into the sample. So if you don't want any of that front end movement of the hammers and you want it to just be a quicker response, get to the note quicker, then you can use this. It won't affect the sound too much, but it affects more the way it feels. And then if you want greater variety in round robins, you can use the borrowed round robins options to give you more. And that is all of the controls for Broadcast Piano. Many of you had requested that for presets, we save them as snapshots, which is exactly what we've done on this instrument. And you can access them with this arrow right here. And if you don't see it, if it looks like this and you can't see your snapshots, use this little camera icon. And then now you can look in these folders, and they're divided into 4 folders. Balance. This is going to be some more high fidelity options that have some subtle adjustments to them. And we'll listen to a couple. This one's called A Touch of Room. Crook mics only. Player perspective room blend. Okay, wide room narrow dynamics. This one has the width increased and then we have the distance dialed up, so we're hearing more of that room. All right, let's explore this color folder a little bit. Bit of saturation, let's hear this one. And we'll do one more here, monochromatic. That one is using a mix of the crook mics and then that mono position, player position mic. All right, let's move over to the song folder. Let's do 1973 Sparkle. And this one's gonna very heavily favor the top velocities. This is supposed to be kind of an Elton John feeling preset. Here's one called A River. Let's hear this one, Nocturne. I don't think I know any Nocturne. I know, let's see if I remember this Chopin Nocturne. This is not going to be right, but it'll be close to it. It goes something like that. That one's called Piece of Peace. And then lastly, let's go down to this folder called Worn. And this is going to be some of the more heavily affected snapshots or presets. Felt Torn. So I think that just about covers everything. This is a little bit of a shorter walkthrough for us, but that is Broadcast Piano. This was kind of a passion project of mine over the past year or so, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I have enjoyed making it. We're really excited to hear what you make with it. Follow us on Instagram at Teletone Audio, but thank you so much for watching. Broadcast Piano is out now.